What's up everyone? I hope you're having an amazing day. I'm Rowan, and recently I posted a YouTube video making this jacket. And the whole idea of that video was to make myself a jacket that I would want to wear every single day. And while I do think we got really close with this jacket, we didn't exactly hit the mark. So today I'm going to be trying again to make myself an everyday jacket. So the idea is I bought this 12 to 14 ounce raw canvas. So it's like this off-white color. And so I'm going to be making a jacket very similar to this one, but with some improvements. And then we're going to dye it. So I'm going to go through the whole process of dyeing a jacket in this video as well. My idea is like to dye it this like gray with some black accents. I don't know, just get a little bit creative. So let's get into it and let's go through the improvements that I want to make. So this is how the jacket fits me, and well, I guess let's just start with the obvious. The sleeves are just too big. They're a little bit too long and they're a little bit too wide. And so they fit a little bit more like a hoodie sleeve than a jacket. That's going to be the first improvement. I'm going to try to draft up a sleeve that fits a little bit slimmer but doesn't reduce the mobility, because I feel like that's such an important thing in a jacket, is to be able to like just move around. You don't want to be in like a stiff coat, you know what I mean? So let's start by drafting out the sleeves. Okay, after a whole lot of brainstorming, I have a solution. So here I drew on the exact same curve I had used to draft out the sleeve of the previous jacket. I also measured the armhole of my pattern, and it measures to 62 centimeters. So here I have it marked out, and my previous sleeve was about 72 centimeters. So I'm going to take off 5 centimeters of each side, and that will solve the armhole problem, but it doesn't solve the width of the sleeve. So to make the sleeve more narrow, we need to make the curve on the sleeve, this curve here, steeper. So the steeper the curve, the more narrow the sleeve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this measurement right here, the top of my curve, and I'm going to move it up about 5 centimeters. I'm just kind of winging it and hoping that 5 centimeters is going to be enough. And so I'm going to move it up 5 centimeters, and then I'm going to redraw these curves but steeper, and then add in the seam allowance and cut it out. So wish me luck, I guess. I'm sure there's a far more simple and more elegant way to do this than what I just did, but it seemed to work. So here's my new curve that I raised. I ended up raising it only 4 centimeters instead of 5, but it should have solved our problem. And then what I did is I added in 3 centimeters here and 1 centimeter here. The reason why I added those 4 extra centimeters is because I want to put in a pleat. And so in the previous jacket, I put in these pleats in the back of the sleeve. And what this pleat does is it adds a lot of mobility to the jacket without sacrificing like a bulky silhouette. And so I just tied it into the yoke. You can kind of see it there. So it's just a beautiful continuation of the yoke. So here I drew a straight line down the center, and I measured out 55 centimeters, which is going to be our length. I took off maybe 5 or 6 centimeters in length from the previous sleeve, so this one should sit perfect on our wrists. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a perpendicular line here, and I'm going to mark out, I think I'll do 28 centimeters for the cuff. That would be 2 centimeters less than the previous jacket, so I think that should work perfect. And now all we have left to do is to just trace a straight line from our corners to the end of the cuff. I'm going to add a slight curve just at the top of both sides. all we have left to do now is add the seam allowance. So I'm just gonna do a 1/2 inch seam allowance all over, and then we can cut it out. So, unfortunately, I ran out of memory card, so you guys missed the most satisfying cutting montage ever, but we cut out the sleeve. So, with the sleeves all done, I'm gonna move on to let's start with our back panel. So, here we have our back yoke and then our back panel. So, previously on the other jacket, I had done a pleat in the middle of the back panel. And in this jacket, I'm opting not to do that. So I'm just gonna trace out these same pattern pieces as they are. I'm doing this one on the fold because it's gonna get doubled in size. And then I'll just do the yoke on the fold as well, and that way the front and back will be perfectly symmetrical. So let's do the front panel now. No modifications on this one. I mean, you can see how janky this pattern piece is. Initially, I had done it with like a front yoke, so I just taped it together and taped the seam allowance. But it works. Here we have most of my pattern pieces. I haven't cut out the collar yet or any of the cuffs, and I haven't really decided on what material I want to use. I don't know if I want to use a leather like the last jacket or canvas. So I'm just going to start putting stuff together and then just do whatever feels right in the moment. I cut out these pattern pieces, and you may be wondering what they are. They're a mistake and a solution at the same time. The mistake I made was I forgot to add allowance so I could fold over the front panels and put my buttons. So that was the mistake, and these are the solutions because I'm going to sew them on like this. Then they're going to get folded over, and so they're going to be like a partial liner. And it's good that that happened, I guess, because one of the flaws of the previous jacket, here, let me show you. One of the flaws of this jacket was that if I wanted to use the pockets with the jacket open, the pocket bags would just peek through. And so with my mistake solution, they'll be elegantly tucked into the liner. And I've done this before on this jacket, also a canvas jacket. Here's the little liner. And I just did a little design on the inside, just got creative. But the jacket will look something similar to this one. I don't think I'll do as many designs. I think I want to let the dye kind of take over a little bit, but definitely a cool jacket. So I'm going to start with the back panels. So I'm just going to attach the yoke to the main body just with the flat-filled seam. Here's our back panel. This is how our flat-filled seam is looking. You may be wondering why I use black thread. And if I were to have used white thread when I went to dye it, since the thread is made out of like polyester, it wouldn't have dyed, so it would have been like really contrasty. So I decided to just use black thread. But yeah, let's move on to the sleeves. So I have our sleeve panels here, and I've done a little bit of work off camera. I've been studying how to make a sleeve placket, which a sleeve placket is basically this opening right here that all the shirts and like formal jackets have. And so I'd never made one before, and so I've been doing research on how to do it, and I came up with a pretty good solution. Well, I came up is an overstatement. I studied this one Indian guy's YouTube video probably watched like the 8-minute video like, I don't know, 15 times. And here's a sketch of the pattern piece that he uses. Here are the measurements. Feel free to take a screenshot of that. Looks super chaotic now. I swear it's not so bad. So you're gonna start by cutting out a rectangle that's 7 inches by 4 inches. And then you're gonna mark out a little square, a little rectangle in the top left corner. So this is just 1 inch wide and 2.5 inches deep. And I like, before I cut this square out, because you have to cut this out, I like to make all of my markings. And so I marked here at 1/4 inch, then 1 inch above that, another inch above that, and then 1/2 inch above that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna draw lines connecting those dots. This is just for reference so we can fold it over with the iron. So I'm just gonna chalk it in. 1. So you should be looking something like this. Now I'm gonna cut out this rectangle and take it to the iron. So we're gonna start by folding this edge over. Now we're gonna fold on this line, but this edge should perfectly match up with this line right here. Give it a really nice good press. And you should be looking something like this on this side, something like that on that side. So now we're gonna take this and attach it to our sleeve. Here's our arm panel, and this is the wrong side. So this is the side that's gonna go on the inside. And here I just marked a line where I think the placket would look good. I just winged it a little bit. And so here we have our placket. I'm gonna line it up and pin it on. Pinned on. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna sew following this rectangle. Here's how we're looking, attached. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna cut down this center line and leave like 1/2 inch, and I'm gonna cut diagonals to the corners. Now I'm just gonna fold these over and just give it a nice little press so we can like fold that seam in. Same thing here at the bottom. Now we're gonna take this and flip it over. Should be looking something like that. This part is always super awkward, so just take it slowly, press it down nicely. Should be looking something like this. We're gonna focus on this side, the side that we didn't fold over yet, and we're gonna roll it up a little bit and just place it on top of that stitch line. Give that a really nice press. And now we're gonna take it to the sewing machine and we're just gonna top stitch right on the edge of that one. And be super, super careful because this is the outside of our piece. So this is gonna be visible. Now we're looking something like this. I did the top stitch and then I did a little back stitch down here. So now comes this part where we're gonna fold this over like that. Also, just covering over our initial stitch. Okay, so here we have it folded over so you can open it like that. You pretty much get the gist of how it's looking. We covered up our stitch line right there. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure 5.5 inches. And so this measurement, I'm just gonna make a little mark right there. This measurement is so we know where we finish the stitch and we stitch over. And so here I have a couple examples that I made I honestly made like 6 of these little mock-ups. So now we're gonna do this stitch here, and once we get here, we're gonna stitch over and then around. So I think that makes maybe a little bit more sense in this one. Get here, stitch over, and then around. What we're gonna do with this little excess flap is we're gonna fold it over, however you find is like the neatest way to do it. I haven't really found a good solution for this yet. But try to get like a centered point. Should be looking something like that. Now let's go top stitch and hope for the best. Just like that, we have our finished sleeve placket. Honestly, it's pretty complicated. I would definitely do a couple practice runs before you do it on your garment. I did, I think, 4 practice runs before I even attempted this. But super happy with how this one came out. Definitely my cleanest one. All right, now let's move on to the front panels. I have both my front panels here. I marked out where I want the pockets to go. I'm not gonna go into too much depth on how to make a welt pocket. I did that in the last video, so you can go check that out if you want. Here I have some black leather that I'm gonna use as the welt itself, or like the visible facing. I'm just gonna crank through, make these welt pockets real quick, and catch up with you in a second. Finally finished these welt pockets. It was a pain in the ass. It took me so long. I did like a French seam on the inside. It was tricky. Definitely got to practice that a bit. I'm pretty happy with how they came out. This top stitch looks ugly right now, just because it's like so much contrast. But hopefully they'll look very inconspicuous as soon as I dye them. Now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a flat felled seam here and attach the back panel. So just sew it on like so. So these shoulders. And then we should be able to attach the sleeves. I feel like it's finally coming together. All right, all attached up. We're looking somewhat like a jacket. There's a little flat felled seam, pretty clean. Now, time for the sleeves. I'm just gonna sew them on with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I'm just gonna bias tape the inside. Cause if I were to do a flat felled seam, I've done it before on the sleeves, but it's kind of like, it's a little bit bulky and a little bit like inconsistent. Like you get some like weird ripples, and it's always hard to get the top stitching straight. So I'm just gonna do bias tape finish on the inside. So here I have our first sleeve pinned up. It's starting to get a little bit of a 3D shape. But do you guys remember I added in like, I think it was 3 extra centimeters to the sleeve so I could put a pleat here in the back in the yoke? Well, honestly, I'm really glad I added those 3 centimeters. Because it came out perfect. Perfect as in there is no extra material for a pleat. So I'm just gonna put it on as is. And yeah, I'll sew it up and then finish the edges. And I'll catch up with you guys once we have our sleeves on. So now it's kind of looking like a jacket, even though a bit weird, but attach the sleeves, attach this bias tape, which honestly, I think it makes it look so clean. Like it's just such a easy way to like really upgrade your finishes. Now the next step is to sew up here all the way to the sleeve. And then I think I'm just gonna do it in one take. And then, you know the drill, bias tape. And then we have to figure out the cuffs. Cuffs is gonna be a mission, but let's sew this up real quick. We're all sewed up now. It's looking really clean. Now comes our kind of lining. So I folded over the edges of these little pattern pieces I cut out. I just did like a 1/4 inch fold over and then a little top stitch. So now I'm gonna sew them on. I'll sew them on the front side like that, and then we'll flip it over, and then I'll probably do a top stitch here. But I just want to finish these edges because it's starting to fray a whole lot. All right, I sewed them on. I sewed on our little liners, but I fucked up and I sewed them on the wrong side. So when I fold them over, it'd be like on the outside of the jacket. I don't know if that makes sense. So I'm just tearing them out real quick. but it's surprisingly easy to tear out. Normally it's like a pain in the ass, especially with this canvas that like frays so easily, but we're getting there. And of course I fucking sewed on both before realizing I'd messed up, so double the work. Okay, this time I got it right. Fixed the mistake. Luckily it didn't take too long. So now I'm just gonna fold it over. It's covered in this like little pieces of thread. I'll clean that up later. But I'm gonna fold it over, give it a nice press, and then I'm just gonna do a top stitch here. Okay, so this is how we're looking. I did the little top stitch. Looking pretty clean. I think it's time to solve our sleeve cuffs. This is what my cuff solution was. Basically what I did is I just measured my sleeve and then folded it in half. And I'm doing like 6 centimeters in height, so it should just sit out about 6 centimeters. And then I obviously added a 1/2 inch seam allowance everywhere. So my idea now is just pin it on. Okay, so here I have it pinned on. I hope this makes sense. I'm gonna do like how you would normally attach a waistband. So I'm gonna sew here at 1/2 inch, and then this is gonna get folded over like so. And then I'll do a top stitch to cover up this bottom stitch. So hopefully there'll be a nice top stitch on the inside and then a nice top stitch on the outside. Okay, so I sewed it on. I'm gonna flip the sleeve inside out. There we go. We're looking kind of like that. So now what we're gonna do is gonna fold down where I already ironed it, line it up, something like that. Now we're gonna pin it up and sew it again. All right, there we go. I have both cuffs done. They come out pretty nice. I like them quite a bit. I think what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put a pleat here. So I'm gonna like fold this in something like that. Okay, so I made just little 2 centimeter pleats on each side and just ironed it down. So this is how it looks on the inside. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna do like the bottom cuff. And so I'm just gonna fold it up a 1/2 inch and then fold it up again an inch. And then we should get a clean finish. We're all ironed up. I ironed it over and pinned it all up. Well, you know the drill now. Gonna do a little top stitch and I'll go all the way around, get this part and then the bottom as well. So it's the next day. I sewed up the bottom part. We're looking quite clean. I've been deciding how I wanna actually close the jacket, because as you can see, these don't overlap at all. So I knew from the beginning that I was gonna have to make some kind of flap. So I've done this a couple times, but my idea is, here, let me show you. My idea is to make a flap very similar to this one. I'm gonna do it leather on the outside, and then I'll do the canvas on the inside, same as this jacket. Instead of these fireman clasps, I'm just gonna use snap buttons. So I'm gonna cut out this piece from our leather. Here you can kind of get a better gist of what it's gonna look like. So it's gonna have a flap like this. So this top side is gonna be leather and the underside is gonna be canvas. Now I'll cut out the same exact piece of this, but with leather. Real quick, while we still have the canvas out, I'm gonna cut out my collar piece, because I'm gonna do the same thing where it's like the inside is canvas, outside is leather. I'm gonna cut out the first piece here. Okay, so we got all our pieces cut out. Our 2 like closure flaps and then the collar. And so this will have like buttons, something like that. I'm thinking about like maybe doing 3 here. So what I'm gonna do now is I'll sew all these together like good size facing, something like that. Stitch it almost all the way around and then flip it right side out. And yeah, and then probably hit a top stitch. So I'll do that real quick. Okay, what feels like an eternity later, we have our little penguin pieces. They look really kind of weird now. I did the top stitch on this one and it was honestly a pain in the ass, so I decided not to do it on the collar. But the collar came out really nice actually. It has like some nice sturdiness to it, and I glued it together so it kind of sticks together. But yeah, let's sew the collar on real quick. I think I'm just gonna sew it on normal. So I'll sew it on like that, and then we'll fold it over. And then I'll just do bias tape on the inside, same as what I did with the other jacket. Okay, so sewed on the collar, And honestly, this is like the first time in the project where I'm like feeling happy with how it's coming out. I think the color really pulled it all together. It was honestly way easier than I thought it was gonna be. So I have color on, but I have all these raw edges. And so my idea is to take some bias tape and sew it on this side, and then just kind of flip it over and tuck this over, and then top stitch it down. And so hopefully that'll work, and then we'll get like this excess material wrapped in bias tape, and it'll all get hidden and nobody will be any wiser. Okay, I did the bias tape and honestly it came out so clean. It's an alright fix, but it honestly came out way better than I thought it would. It needs a little bit of an iron, but dude, I'm gonna try it on. I'm so hyped with how it looks. Does not look so sick. Like, I'm so happy. Like, honestly, putting on the collar changed everything. I was kind of like not so hyped about the project, and now it's like actually something cool. I think it'll look so much better once we dye it though, but I do kind of like the white. It's all right, it's growing on me. The black accents are interesting though. I feel like a penguin, definitely. It's the next day now, and I have our jacket here. And we're gonna start dyeing process. So I think first step is just to get it really wet. Okay, I've soaked the jacket for a little while. I think it's completely wet. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna drape it over these little crates, and I'm gonna flick black dye. So I have black dye here, and then I have gray dye. And so I'm heating up some water now. I'm gonna make like a gray dye concentrate. But before I put the jacket in that, I'm gonna like sprinkle on some black dye so it gets a little bit of a tie-dye effect. I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm just winging it. So I'm just gonna drape it over this crate. The crates are just so it doesn't get dirty. There's no actual purpose for them. It's like this powder. I don't know if you can see that, but it's super windy right now. So this should be really fun. I don't know if you can see that. It looks crazy. Like, look at the colors in there. This is just black. Okay, this is what the jacket looks like. Hope you can see that. It is looking wild. I don't know what to think. Like, it's a mix of so many colors. Like, I mean, the dye is supposed to be black, but I guess it makes sense that they like mix red and everything to make black. I think I'm gonna do a little bit more, and then we'll dunk it. So, gave the jacket a quick rinse. Didn't really get that much dye out, but I have a bucket of hot water here, and so I'm gonna make some gray dye real quick. So I have some salt. This will help the dye stick. And then my gray dye. It's just like powdered dye. I don't know what it's really called in English, but it's pretty much the only dye I can get here in Chile. And I guess it works pretty well. This is so fun. I feel like a little kid making potions again. This is really exciting. So now I'm just gonna let it sit in here. I don't know, maybe like 20 minutes, 15, something like that. Okay, so it's been about, I don't know, 15 minutes. I'm gonna take it out, I think. I think it's ready. So, I got some clean water here. I'm gonna pour some vinegar in it. This helps the dye stick to the clothes. So, just a nice little glug. And then I'm just gonna let it sit in this water for maybe another 5 minutes. I'll give it a good rinse, and we get to see if we dye it some more or if it's good at it as is. And to be honest, it's looking like weirdly purple. So I gave it a really nice rinse, and we're still this really weird kind of purple, which I do actually kind of like. Obviously it wasn't what I meant to happen, but I think I'm gonna add a little bit more black though. So I think I'm gonna do another round of the sprinkle and hope that adds some more character to it. So that last coat, I tried to make it like kind of concentrated, which I'm not really sure if it worked. I washed it out. It was really hard to wash out, but I think I got most of the dye out. So I'm just gonna let it dry overnight and I'll get back to you in the morning. Okay, so it's the next day and jacket's all dried and I gave it a really good iron. Honestly, ironed it for probably an hour because it was so wrinkled. But it came out not how I expected at all. I was hoping for like a gray black, and it's like this tie-dye purple, which honestly I am kind of a fan of. I think it looks really cool. It did shrink a little bit in the process, so it is a little bit tighter fitting, which is okay, I guess. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna attach this part here and then put all the buttons, make the tags, and I think I'm gonna wax it. I think this purple with a coat of wax would look really, really good. Maybe I'll wax it first. Yeah, let's wax it right now. So here I have a little bit of, this is just beeswax. So I'm just gonna pretty much cover the jacket in it. All right, so this is what it's looking like post-wax. Honestly, really, really loving it. I love these, like the line that the liner kind of gives it. Super cool. I think now it's time to attach this one. So I'm just gonna sew it on and try my best to not get anything, like to not catch the liner or the pocket. I think it may be kind of tricky, but let's do it. So we're all sewed up. It was, honestly, it's pretty annoying, but made it happen. Now I think it's time we do some buttons. All right, there we go. There's the first one. Super clean, super nice insides. So now I'm gonna do the other sleeve and then we'll start on here. So got both of our sleeves done. So we're all finished up with the buttons. It was kind of tricky. I had to turn off the camera there for a second, but we're looking good. We're all lined up. Both cuffs looking great. And the inside is super clean as well. I made sure to not get the lining, so it's, can't even tell the buttons are there. I'm gonna make the tag now. I'm just gonna do a quick little tag out of leather, and then we get to see the actual final product. This is what it looks like. Honestly, I'm really happy with how it looks. The purple, even though it wasn't planned, I think it's beautiful. I think it's really nice. I love the metallic look that the wax gives it. Unfortunately, it did shrink quite a bit. As you can see, the sleeves are pretty short, which is kind of funny because it's like an overcompensation of the last jacket I tried to make, which it was perfect except for the sleeves were a little bit too large. So went too far the other way, but you live and you learn. And I feel like I definitely learned a lot in the process of making this jacket. And I hope you learned something as well by watching this video. And yeah, if you did, go drop a comment. Go tell me what I did wrong, what you enjoyed, or just whatever you want. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have an amazing day. And I'll see you in the next one.